All right, everybody. The NBA season is getting set to kick off. You all know the date, Tuesday, October 22nd, Celtics and Knicks. It is ring night. So our full tilt NBA season preview is here. And to help us break it all down, we've got our guy, Steve Ceruti of the Ryen Russillo podcast. This is Green with Envy. You guys know the deal. This is a live YouTube production here. Get in the chat. Let's have some fun and let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, this is your boy Will Ware checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me today, as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Menakis. But we got to skip past the pleasantries that we usually have here and get right to our special guest joining us today of TheRinger.com and the Ryen Russillo podcast, one of our favorite guests here on the show today to do a full NBA season preview. It's the one and only Steve Ceruti. Ceruti, how you doing, man? Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Always enjoy coming on with you guys. That's a hell of an intro you guys have there. That little graphic swoop away. That's impressive. I like it.
Gets people hype, man. I'm telling you, it's it costs $5 to do it. I was one of the best
well
investments
worth it,
I've made for the
show. I'm ready to run through a wall. Let's go, boys.
Well, let's do it then. Let's get this going here, man. We're excited. We got a lot of stuff that we want to talk about with you today. We are live on YouTube for those of you listening right now and those of you watching. Appreciate you joining. Get that chat going right now. We're also live on Twitter. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple when this releases in a podcast format, you can catch the full video on our YouTube page. So make sure that you guys go click and hit that subscribe button. But Ceruti, we kind of talked about this just kind of shooting the shit before the show. Like, the season's here, right? It kind of snuck up on us, just that the NBA season is back. For Greg and I, obviously covering the Celtics, went all the way through the NBA finals of the championship. Then we went into all the melodrama that for some reason melodrama of the Olympics between Jason Tatum playing and not playing, Jaylen Brown even before that not making the team, so on and so forth. But nevertheless, the season's here. It's right here upon us. So let's just start very broadly. What's the thing, or what are some things that are getting you really excited about this NBA season?
Oh man, I guess it would be that it does feel like there's so much parity, and I think that's what the league wanted. And it felt like for so many years, like 10 plus years ago, it was always like, I don't know, there's like a couple teams maybe that can win. There's a clear favorite, especially when the Warriors were going through the run, LeBron. And now, like, we can get to this in our conference thoughts later, but like, I'm like, are people kind of overlooking Denver? Like, are we just running them off too early? Like, are we too high on OKC, or like, are we not high enough because they basically fixed all their problems from last year? Boston in the East seems like, you guys, you're excited, seems like a clear favorite, but there are a couple teams that I do like in the East, although I don't know come playoff time if I'm gonna actually pick them to make the finals. But it feels, especially out West, man, you got Memphis coming back. Like, there's a lot of it feels like the bottom of the league is kind of pretty straightforward, and like everything from 20 up, there's like a lot of really interesting teams. So I guess it's just that, like, it's never felt better to, like, especially on a league pass night, to just like watch a bunch of teams and feel pretty happy about what you're looking at.
Where's the line for you about a team that you're just like not going to tune into on League Pass?
Oh man. It's not even like a record thing, because like, we all watched Wemby last year. It's probably just if I
but he's an exception. Like, I feel like that's a total exception. Like, it's Wemby is,
no, you're right,
so beyond like anything else from a team that finished in the bottom 3-4, whatever the Spurs finished.
Yeah, like, I wasn't. Sorry, apologies to our guy at the Ringer house who was the best, but I wasn't locked into Wizards games last year. They were probably the team that I avoided the most.
Doing it for you?
It was not doing it for me. Although there were times a couple years ago, and I was like, man, he would be great in a Magic uniform. Like, I think it could work. And then now I'm like, thank God that didn't happen. But yeah, even like, I like Cade a lot. So I found myself like, I like watching the Pistons, even though they were kind of dreadful, especially during that massive losing streak last year. But I'm just like a Cade believer, and I refuse to acknowledge to like admit that he's actually not good. I think Toronto's really boring, and I don't like watching Toronto. So maybe that's one. There's a couple teams, like, nothing against them. Like, the Hornets don't do a ton for me. I'm not a huge LaMelo guy. So it's kind of star dependent. Like, if I like your guy, even if you're not good, like, I watched Scoot last year. I think everybody wanted to see what he was like. It wasn't awesome. Mm-hmm. So like, I think it depends on like how excited I am with your star player if your team's not very good.
Yeah, there's probably only a couple of teams that I'm not going to tune into. I'll tune into the Pistons for sure. I'm a Cade guy as well. I think that they got some interesting pieces. You know, they got Duran, who's a beast of a center, only like 20, 21 years old. They got the Thompson kid.
Baby Dwight Howard. Yeah.
Yeah, baby Dwight. And they've got Ivy, who's an interesting player.
They've always
So
got beef stew hanging around.
they got beef
Yep.
stew. Always go with some beef stew, especially in the fall. I think there's plenty of guys on the Pistons I'm going to tune into. We were watching the Raptors because they just played the Celtics in the preseason last night, and they don't really have a lot, man. Like if Scotty Barnes isn't going off, if he isn't reaching a level that everyone hopes he can get to, but probably is not going to be the max player. They just signed him to 5 years, 225, whatever it is. Like, I don't think Scotty Barnes is going to reach that this year, unless you're a huge RJ Barrett guy. And like, unless you're in Canada, RJ, to be honest, you're probably not going to be watching the Raptors.
I like RJ. I was sad to see him leave the Knicks, even though that was a no-brainer trade. But yeah, he's not really moving the needle for me. I mean, quickly, I'm not a big quickly guy, so I don't know what Toronto's necessarily doing. Plus, like the Magic and Raptors fans kind of have a little bit of a beef, so I don't like to support them. This all dates back to the Suggs draft when they took Scotty. But I have nothing against Scotty. I just don't particularly like watching their team. But pretty much anybody out west, I'll watch. I mean, we'll see what Donovan Clingan. I'm a Connecticut guy. He grew up a couple towns down from me. Like I'll tune in. UConn. My wife went to UConn. I didn't go to UConn. He is. Yeah, he went to Bristol Central High School. Same high school I believe as Woj. But yeah, so I'm interested in most of the teams out west. There's just it does feel like the bottom of the East is probably where you're like, I'm not really locked into. I mean, the Nets are probably the worst of all the teams that we haven't even talked about yet. But man, I'll watch just about anybody. I'm excited for it. It's always good to have something on like a random. We're obviously in the thick of football season too, so we're doing that on all the different shows. Ryan, Bill, whatever. So we're still locked in on that, but like it's nice on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday night when you got like, oh shoot, we could pop NBA League Pass on again. That kind of live on its own, so that's exciting.
Yeah, it is right now where that Tuesday, Wednesday, it's like, it's not really much going on. I know the MLB playoffs are going on and stuff, so I've have that checked in. Yeah. But you're right. Until we get like a week or two from now, let's do a little baseball tangent here. I love baseball. That was my sport growing up. Like I'm mad at myself that I don't follow baseball anymore. Like. I think I've seen Ohtani hit maybe 7 at bats this entire year, and he's literally fucking Babe Ruth, and I just don't ever watch him. And like I'm mad at myself that I'm not appreciating enough, except for highlights on Twitter what's happening. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from, feeling like a bad baseball fan. I used to love baseball, and I feel like a horrible fan right now.
Yeah, it is. Playoff baseball is fun, but you can't get me for 162. I'm just not going to be able to do that anymore,
I don't know, like covering basketball the way that Greg and I have over the last 5 years. I don't know how people have lives that cover baseball.
No,
it's 162 games. Spring training's an entire month. If your team is good, that's another month on top of it. That's 8 months plus having to understand prospects and in AAA, AA, all that. It makes no sense of how anyone has a life that covers baseball. Like, I mean, maybe that's why it's so niche, and we're explaining why that is. But let's move away from baseball. Let's keep it here.
That's enough
in the Eastern Conference. Yeah, we could go on some deep tangents here with the three of us here, which is why we love having you on, because we could take these conversations and go anywhere with them. But let's look at the Eastern Conference here for a minute. You mentioned, the Knicks in coordination with RJ Barrett, but of course they just made their big move. Getting Cat, sending out Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle, and even Dante DiVincenzo. The Wolves and Knicks happened to meet up in the preseason. Yeah. Things got a little bit frisky. What are your thoughts on the Knicks? Where do you see them in the Eastern Conference? You mentioned the Celtics being, kind of looked at as the favorites. Are the Knicks right there with them? Are they a little bit below? How are you viewing the Knicks as of today?
Yeah, like I think there's a good chance the Knicks could get the 1 seed. Like I don't think Boston really cares. I mean, you guys could tell me if you disagree. You might just be talented enough and deep enough to make it happen. But what do we know? Tibbs cares about the regular season. Those guys play a ton of minutes. They're not as deep now as maybe they used to be. So injuries are kind of a concern. But I think they're kind of in a like it's a little bit of a prove it thing to be like, hey, we have all these pieces, but we want to make sure everybody knows how good we are. So I think they're probably going to be, in contention to get that 1 seed. The Cat trade, I'm not a Cat guy. I'm sorry. Although weirdly enough, I do think it's a big loss for Minnesota. Like I like DiVincenzo. I don't like Randall at all. I probably like Randall less than I like Cat, but I do think it's a big loss for Minnesota more. We could talk about that later, but from a purely Knicks perspective, like I'm not saying anything crazy. Like they're going to be good in the regular season. I just have my concerns of like, I don't think they're better than you guys. I think people are kind of sleeping on Milwaukee, and that's really just like my trust in Giannis. Because remember, he just hasn't been healthy in the playoffs the last 2 years, so that's really the differentiator. And then am I willing to say that like I'm not going to believe in Dame? I mean, I know we kind of laughed about it last year, like, oh, he didn't really work out in the offseason because he was afraid of getting hurt. I do think there is some. I don't think that's crap. I think there is some truth to that. And he is older, so we'll see. But I think people are kind of sleeping a little bit on Milwaukee, and I think the Sixers are going to have a good. We were just in Philly for a Russillo live show, and it's funny because I feel like there's like online Philly fans, and then there's like Philly fans that you meet in real life. And it was like I was in an Uber like traveling to the show, and I was talking to this like diehard Sixers guy, and he shared all the same concerns with me about Embiid's health and the team like kind of coming together, and sort of like the fringe guys being like really old / like minimum salary guys, but like, I do think there's a good chance that because of those 3 guys specifically, like even if Embiid, and I think he should sit a ton, like I think Maxey is awesome, and I think Paul George is going to be great for them right off the bat. So they'll probably win a ton of regular season game with Embiid or without. So I think the East, like as far as like what that order is, 1 through 4 and 5, maybe if you want to include Cleveland. I know some people are high in Cleveland. I think it could surprise some people.
Yeah, the team that just is standing out to me, obviously the Knicks, just to finish our conversation about Towns, I also am not a cat guy. This is not a cat podcast, this is a podcast. And
the funniest thing you said real quick, Greg, about the whole trade is that there isn't really many people that are cat guys or Randall guys. So I think that's why everyone across the board has a different opinion about who won that trade or how they feel about that trade.
Yeah, and I just don't know if the Knicks ultimately are going to have enough depth / shooting for them to be able to hang with the Celtics. Like the Celtics this preseason are just coming out and shooting 63 pointers a game. Like they clearly are tripling down on shooting triples every single game. But last season, the team that gave the Celtics the most issues in the playoffs, although we swept them, was the Pacers. And Will and I actually recorded a podcast this morning. And one thing we were talking about with the Celtics is like, did they learn a lesson from the Pacers and how the Pacers play offense? Because we've just been pushing the ball, running a ton of like early action, dribble handoffs and pick and rolls underneath the 3-point line, very similar to how TJ McConnell will kind of probe until he gets the right angle he wants in the screen. And the Pacers are still a team that stand out to me as someone that could be much better than they were even last year, because they got a full training camp of Siakam. Benedict Mathurin was hurt last year in the playoffs and didn't play. Neesmith is really coming on. Miles Turner's really found his way there. Nembhard blast onto the scene. TJ McConnell's probably the best backup point guard in the league. So, we throw out all the big names, and the big names are fun to talk about, but the Pacers are kind of slept on, man. And I don't see, what their weakness is going to be for a team like, Philly, if Embiid's healthy, that's always the caveat there. But like, I don't see any other team other than Philly with their size really being able to exploit them. Even Towns, he's just going to sit at the 3-point line, and like, how much of a difference is there really between Towns and Miles Turner? Like there's clearly some difference, but I don't know what the difference actually is.
See, I think I like Cleveland way more than maybe you guys, and I think I like them more than Indy, only because that Indy run kind of felt a little weird last year. Like it was also weird because Halliburton was hurt, right? But they still made it that far, and everyone's like, what's wrong with him? But they still kept winning series and games, so it was very strange. So you could easily say, hey, yeah, like he's going to be healthy this year. They're going to be better. You mentioned Mathurin. I don't know. I think defensively that they're just kind of like bad defensively, and I think that's not like a recipe for success long term anytime. So the Siakam continuity, like you could sell me and all this stuff. I love TJ as well. I think I like Cleveland just because of the head coaching change. Like I just think they, Donovan Mitchell to me he's absurd, and he's not quite at that like elite superstar tier, but he's whatever that next level is, and he could certainly take over any playoff series that he's in. I mean, in a 7-game series, he could theoretically be the best player in that series in any given series. Now, he hasn't put that fully together over the course of a playoffs, but that's how good he is talent-wise. And you mentioned size. They've got the size. I'm not the biggest Mobley guy. And I say I'm not the biggest Mobley guy, and I only say that in relation to like what people expect him to be. I think he's a good player. He's a nice player. But, we were talking about like, is this the guy, the next KG? He's not even close to that, especially on offense. So, but I do like Cleveland. I feel like they're the team that if I'm like looking for a sleeper or somebody who like is going to surprise, because I think the coaching change is, I think that's like I don't know how many wins or whatever that adds you, but it certainly
Yeah.
adds like competency to your organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think regular season wise, I'm with you. And Cleveland last year was a team I thought, at least preseason, I was like, I think that might be who the Celtics play in the conference finals. It might be the Cleveland Cavaliers, and especially because I've started to believe more that, that high end depth matters more than these teams that boast. Have you seen our depth? And they have, 10, 11 guys that are NBA players, but it's like, how many of them are top 6 guys in a conference finals or a finals? And it's like, there's only like 2 of them, right? So therefore, cool, you have depth that will help you in the regular season at times, but in the playoffs, it's not going to matter. And Cleveland does have 4 really talented guys as their 4 best players. I just think this is one of those rare circumstances where the talent doesn't outweigh that their fit is just not quite right. And they're also just missing something connecting that in the wing. That's always been something that's off for me. But what's funny to me about this whole conversation that we're having now about these teams that could kind of like crash the party, so to speak, we haven't talked about the Magic. We haven't talked about your squad, which is 100% the team that I'm looking at that I think the kind of the jump the Pacers made, where it's like, how the hell they end up in the conference finals? Out of any of those teams that, aren't the Celtics, Knicks, and Sixers, and we'll talk about the Bucks here in a second. I have a lot of reservations about the Bucks, but I think those are the 3 teams I look at that, like, you 3 all should only have conference finals expectations. And obviously that's not possible for all 3 of them to end up that way, but that all 3 of them should feel like we should be there. The Magic, to me, adding KCP, another year of Banchero, who I think Paolo is on track to be top 10 guy in this league sooner rather than later. Like, I think he's at least on that track. Does he get there? Who knows? It's really hard. Franz's jump shot will be a big thing, but I think the way that the Magic are set up, getting KCP, who can be a 2-way guy, their level of defense, the growth internally of all their young guys, I feel like the Magic are the team that is set up to maybe crash that party as a top 4 seed. And if they get some of the breaks that the Pacers got, they could somehow find themselves in the Eastern Conference Finals. Tell us how you're feeling about this Magic season.
I'm definitely confident, but I'm trying not to get like a little too ahead of myself and be a homer. I think, the offense, I like the KCP signing. I mean, sure, they overpaid him. Of course they did, but that's what happens in free agency. I'm not really that worried about that. But like, if you're telling me that KCP is just going to take Gary Harris's minutes, like, this is a better team than last year. The Franz thing is interesting because the shooting wasn't as awesome as I'd hoped it would be during the Olympics. But I don't know. Like, am I really going to sit here and believe that this guy's just forgot how to shoot over the course of a couple of seasons? I don't. I think it's a confidence thing, and I think he'll figure it out. But I think what you said is right. Like, this team if Banchero makes a jump like SGA made or like Ant makes, then like, yeah, this team is like, they're going to be a top 4 potentially seed. The thing is, like, if they finished 5th last year, and I think they were tied. I think I have the standings here. I think they were tied with Indy. So it was like what? So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4, 5 teams were separated by 2 games. Actually, 6 teams were separated by 3 games. Like, it's so tight from like 3 to 8 ish in the East that, like, if they were the 5 seed again, I would consider that a success. Like, I think that's just, I don't think that's like a huge L. It kind of depends on how things shake out. Obviously, we'll have to see like what injuries take place, because that's why Philly ended up dropping into the play-in last year, and I don't think anyone thinks they're going to be a play-in team this year. So you have to add them up. So who's dropping down, and that's either Cleveland, Indy, Orlando. Maybe you think it's Milwaukee. Who knows? I just think there's so much competition in that area that, like, I'm not going to sit here and say like the Magic couldn't. If they got home court in the first round, massive success, great season. I'd obviously like to win the first round playoff series, but that would be amazing. But if they didn't, I still think they could make progress. Like, I think Suggs can get better. I think Franz could be better. I think Paolo could be better, and they still end up being a 5 or a 6 seed this year. And to me, that's fine, actually, because the pressure's not really on them yet to like be a title contender. I think we want to see, like, I'm always more about like, let's make sure all the players in the direction of the franchise is going the right way, and the wins and the progress, and hopefully the conference finals appearances will come. But you'll be able to see that with your eyes this year. And I think last year, like, they were a little bit fortunate to get that 5 spot, although they played really well at the end of the season. And then, it was kind of like a rude awakening the first 2 games against the Cavs, where they just got, kind of their doors blown off, and then they settled in and almost won the series.
That was one of the ugliest series I think I've ever seen. That was a tough watch.
And any playoff series with them this year is probably going to be ugly too, because that's how they play. Like, and the thing is, like, defense does travel, and they're going to they're going to have themselves in a lot of games, but also the lack of offense, like, really just scares me. Like, if they're going to be a bottom 3rd offense again this season, it's just really hard to compete at the highest level, overcoming not having a consistent offense.
So who has
that's my fear.
Who has the keys there? Is it going to be Suggs? Is the ball going to be in Banchero's hands to generate offense for 48 minutes, or is he just your crunch time guy?
I think it's Banchero and Franz. Like, I think there's a reason that they haven't really, not that they wouldn't want to bring in a point guard. It's funny. Like, I remember kicking around being like, hey, Chris Paul could kind of be interesting for them for like one season, just to like, take some of the pressure away from those two guys. But it seems like the front office and the franchise is like, we're just going to go up and down with however they do run on this team. And I sort of agree. I mean, it was like pretty wild when, what was it, I think it was Paulo's rookie year. And then even into last year, like they asked those guys to do so much. And then that's what it annoys me when people throw the Paulo turnovers, because he did have a lot of turnovers in that playoff series against the Cavs. But like, how many second-year players in their first playoff series are being asked to literally run their offense? Like, we're talking like LeBron type play. And I'm not saying he is LeBron, but like, are being asked to do that. Like, Ant didn't do that. SGA didn't do that. Tatum certainly didn't do that. Like, that's insane what they asked Paulo to do. And it was still pretty damn good. Yeah, it wasn't perfect. He turned the ball over a lot, but he's not a point guard. He'll learn to do that. So I think the franchise is like, hey, we're gonna go as these two guys go. Suggs will be the point guard. KCP will probably be the two, but it's kind of interchangeable. I don't think it really matters. And Suggs isn't really a true point guard, but I think he can at times. So that's his next step. Like, he shot better from three last year. I think he was near or at 40%. The defense, he's obviously an all defensive caliber type player, but can he actually be like a little bit more of like an actual point guard and run the offense at times and take some of the pressure away? I think that's going to be a huge step in whether or not this team kind of grows or not. But I think, again, I'm cool with like, let your best player figure it out during the regular season.
Man, there is so much Marcus Smart to Jalen Suggs, and that is both a compliment and probably not a compliment at the same time. But just having gone through the Marcus Smart experience, I feel like I see so many similarities, and exactly what you're saying. You're hoping to see the development is what we talked about with Marcus Smart for so long. And we did see that right before, he eventually was traded. And it's sometimes those tough moves need to be made to kind of get to that next level. But let's transition here. Make your case for the Bucks being a little bit slept on, because I feel like Greg was on this last year that they were a little bit overhyped, and I think this year there's a glaring hole for me that I just can't imagine they overcome. But I want to hear the case for them being slept on.
Oh, it's just Giannis. It's just Giannis, like, maybe being the best player in the league. that's kind of.
I mean, that's
like, I think people forget about that. Yeah, like there's a world in which like this also goes really poorly, and then he asks out, and it's like a disaster there. But clearly, and this is the thing that was the issue last year, was like, Giannis wanted Adrian Griffin, he wanted Bud out. He got his wish, and it was a mess the first 30 games of the season, and they pulled the plug on it and had to restart, and then he gets hurt at the end of the year. It's mostly just a pure play of like, if those two guys are right, and because I don't really like their supporting cast. I mean, Brooks is another year older. They're certainly not deep, but this is just a pure, like, the East could be kind of wide open. Do we fully trust Philly and New York yet? Like, are we just overlooking, Giannis, who won back-to-back MVPs not long ago? That's really it.
It's so funny with the Bucks, man, because they've had the pieces that if they had just held on to them or had been able to like make the Bogdanovich trade 5 years ago, whatever it was, like, he's the perfect two guard there. They had DiVincenzo, like, his development. Imagine if DiVincenzo's on that team, you feel a lot better. They got Gary Trent, who's like, okay, but he couldn't really do anything. Like, that Raptors team that had a whole bunch of players that everybody wanted, but when they were all together, they sucked. So how good were they?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's one of those guys. I don't really see it with the Bucks, unless Dame decides to have one last great year in him to coincide with Chris Middleton somehow staying healthy for an entire year. I just don't see it with them, man. I think the most interesting team to me outside probably of the Pacers that I mentioned earlier would probably be the Knicks or the Sixers, right? We touched on the Sixers a little bit. Who do you see having the best chance to take down the Celtics? And just give me your overall thoughts on the Celtics heading into this season.
I think it's probably the Knicks, even though I do like the Sixers. I just don't know that I could fully trust and want to trust. Like, I like Embiid. Like, I don't have any issues with him. Like, I think I like that he wears his emotions on his sleeve. I like that he cares. Like, when he cried after that Raptors loss in the playoffs a couple years ago, like, people are making fun of him. I I'd go the other way. I love that. Like the guy, like there's plenty of guys that would like act like that wasn't a big deal or like whatever. I like that he was like really that upset about it. But I also think he does dumb shit a lot where he tries to play too much. He gets himself hurt. And do I also think he's in the best shape all the time? No. So I just can't in good faith be like, yeah, I'm gonna tie my wagon to that team. So I guess I'd have to say by default, it's probably the Knicks, even though I don't think the Knicks are gonna be a finals team. I just think I think there's something missing. And I don't know that again, the Cat thing to me, like, you're telling me that like Brunson and Cat on the court at the same time, like both of those guys are gonna be attacked like when they're on defense. So I not that I wouldn't have made the trade because they had to get rid of the Randall contract, though I think the DiVincenzo thing does suck because now they're like way less deep on the wing. But maybe that doesn't matter for Tibbs. But if I had to pick one of those two teams, I would say the Knicks. And then for your Celtics, like, you know, you're so freaking deep. You know, you barely even needed Porzingis last year. You know, we'll see what happens this year. Obviously, you know, who's going to not be there at the start of the season. I don't know what they're going to care or what their record's going to be in the regular season, but you know, I just don't think, and there isn't like a Miami boogeyman out there for you guys either. There's not a team that you guys are like afraid of. So unless
honestly, it kind of was the Knicks. I would say most Celtics fans would have.
This isn't the same Knicks team.
I don't know if it's quite the level of boogeyman. It's like a healthy respect of. It wasn't like boogie. I think Jokic was the closest thing to a boogeyman for Celtics fans.
Yeah.
Was seeing Jokic after those 2 regular season games where it's just like, okay, cool. We've dominated every single team and player in the NBA. We have no answer for Nikola Jokic. I think that would have been the closest thing to a boogeyman for the Celtics.
Yeah, that would be my answer, actually, because like, you know, I talked earlier about were we writing off the Nuggets too much, and I'll save that. But yeah, like I don't, there isn't a version of that in the Eastern Conference where it's like, hey, this is just a bad match. I think the Celtics are just a bad matchup. It's really just like, if you guys have a bad shooting series, like could that happen? You talk about the threes, like it almost kind of happened. In a couple different, I mean, who knows with Tatum, but I don't know. Like it doesn't, I don't think I like the East has so much depth and it's strong in like the middle, but I don't know that there's like Milwaukee's not the same as they used to be a few years ago. So I'd be surprised. I know I mean, I know it's boring to say that, but I'd be pretty surprised if anybody knocked them off.
So Ceruti, one question real quick. So aside from, I need you still to bring up the player of the class belt on the Russillo pod at one point. But even more pressing than that, is there any way that you can get Russillo to do a Luke Cornett starting center segment on the pod?
Maybe he's got to lock in first and I guess grind the tape as Russillo always does because he's not going to do it without watching like 30 hours of Cornett tape. But yeah, potentially like
that's the thing. Man. He looks good in the preseason.
I know. That's the thing is like
gonna start.
You guys, you have guys like that are just like, actually, are you really missing much? Like he's gonna be a good regular season player for you and probably be fine. And you can even rest some of the main guys going, through the dead parts of the season. So I don't know. Like again, it sounds boring, but the only thing would be too, like how do you guys feel about, because it was before last year, like the season before, everybody was just obviously killing the coach. Why am I blanking on his name?
Mazzulla. Joe Mazzulla.
Mazzulla. What? Yeah, after Udoka, and it feels like everyone just kind of like forgot. Are you guys all in on him? Like, have you forgotten all? Because it was like kind of bad, and then like they won a title last year, and now it's like, is he actually a sneaky good coach, or like where are we at?
I'm gonna pull this up again for the second time today, Will. So this is from the Start and 5 documentary. So this is a clip of Joe Mazzulla talking about Jason Tatum dealing with criticism. So this is just what like I've grown to love about Joe Mazzulla is how he answers questions and the way that he communicates with his players. It's like a 10-second clip.
It seems to me that Jason has to deal with unfair criticism.
Gets to deal with.
Yeah.
He gets to deal with it. It's the ultimate compliment. And that's what we talk about. It's like, this is what you asked for.
I love him, but I also am like, dude, you're like a walking cliche sometimes. Like, there was the one where they were like asking them about the royal family, and he's like, who? Jesus, Mary, and Joseph or something. And you're like, dude, what are we doing right now?
So that's year one, Mazzulla. So kind of back to your question. Right now, everybody loves Joe Mazzulla, right? You win a championship, especially in Boston,
rightfully
you're in the Northeast. You know how it works, right? And so I've thought about this a lot. Now his quirky, weird, just eccentricities that he has, they're all like, man, look at this guy. He's so awesome because he's winning. As soon as the Celtics aren't winning, that's going to flip in the Boston media very quickly. It just doesn't play the same way when you're not winning, but he's winning. So it works out. So, I mean, I think with Mazzulla, one of the things that flipped massively from year 1 to year 2. Year 1, I was like, who is this guy? This guy feels like a robot. He's a walking cliche, like you said. Like he's just, like,
talked
I
like
don't
he
even
was
know
in
how
over
to.
his head. And it wasn't
Yeah.
his fault, but it was like I could
Right.
just see this guy thinking out loud, if that makes
Dude,
sense.
he's
Like,
our age. Ceruti, he's
yeah,
our
I
age.
know. Oh,
Like,
it was an impossible situation. Like it's nuts what
and
happened that he just gets
that's where it
thrust into
comes
this
back
role.
to. And I was thinking about this, like, so that year I was all set to be like, all right, this is the year the Celtics, they just went to the finals the year before. We're going back this year. We're going to win. And then that all happens either the night of training camp or 2 nights before training camp is when this all happens. And I remember during our like preseason, right around this time, our preview pod, I was all set to be like, all right, it's the Celtics Nuggets final is what we're going to get. And I changed my pick to the Bucks because I was like, at some point, it has to matter that you just lost your head coach the night before training camp, and the guy who was your 4th assistant that's the same age as me and my best friend who started a podcast just because we were bored during COVID is now coaching the Celtics. Like, that has to matter at some point, you know? And I think just everything you talked about with being, you know, just no fault of his own, being unprepared and like not having the full grasp of the job is really what hindered that first year. And I've said this multiple times. The Celtics got out to a historic offensive start when he first took over. Worst thing that could have happened for him because they went like 21-4, and it's like, oh, this team is ready built. Any team, any guy can come in and coach. Like, Mazzulla is just fine. We're good, and you know. And then it gets to the postseason, and you need some more seasoning, and he didn't quite have it yet. And he was very self-aware.
Dude.
He didn't have to say. He lost his number 1 assistant halfway through the year as well. So, you know, so many factors against him. I think it's once we got an off season to get away from it, it's like, all right, that was pretty unfair for us all to be like, dude, call a timeout. Do you even know how to call a timeout? Like, that was the biggest thing that he didn't know how to do that everyone else on their couch knew how to do. And it was, you know, the number 1 like thing against him of why he can't be the guy going forward. And now it's a completely different area of people not understanding how good he is outside of Boston.
It wasn't even just the timeouts. They were like little things that over time, especially watching Brad Stevens for as many years as we did, like the offense, defense substitutions at the end of quarters and things like that. Anytime there's a dead ball, making sure you have your best defense.
Now he does it in the preseason.
He's doing it in the preseason. That's the point. Last night, he subbed out Sam Hauser and Jaden Springer for each other on like 4 straight dead balls at the end of the first quarter. Like, he's really figured out the way to manipulate the game, and he processes so much information that I think he was on information overload his first year and like analysis paralysis, whatever that term is. And I think he's finally figured out exactly who he is as a coach, what his philosophy is, and everybody's kind of bought into it. And now that we have the championship to back it up, like, he's playing with house money at this point. So is that, like, everybody on the court, if you've tuned into any of the preseason, the Celtics are like brimming with confidence right now. Everybody feels like they are hitting their peak, hitting their prime, Joe Mazzulla included.
By the way, I think Russillo and Mazzulla, that would be a pretty good interview. I feel like who can try to, I feel like Russillo would try to get into that awkward space that Mazzulla wants to be in, and they would both live there. I don't know. It would either be a great podcast or it would be terrible. I have no idea which way it would go. I think that's a good one that you guys should.
It'd be must listen either way. Yeah. Because we've had Brad on, and Brad is, you know, I love Brad, but he's just, you know, he's a pretty straightforward guy. He like doesn't really say anything controversial. Yeah. Like there, you know, there's, you know, it's not,
like,
you know.
Well, what can you bring to the Celtics defense from studying the War of 1812? And then
I'm glad you asked that. Yeah.
No,
yeah. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny though with the Celtics though too? Because like if the Nuggets don't blow a 20-point lead against the T-Wolves, are the Celtics champions? And are we having a completely different conversation this year? That's what's so funny is like I'm one of them. I'm confident in the Celtics, but like before last year, you're like, oh man, are they ever going to be able to get over the hump? And we're talking about the Jays and what their future is, even though I kind of hate that conversation. And it's something that was out of their hands might have completely changed like the fate of how many championships they could potentially win now.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that we've said on, you know, especially during all the postseason was, aside from the injuries, you know, the styles make fights. And it was the styles that lined up in the Western Conference that kind of worked out perfectly. So let's use this as a transition here and go to the Western Conference and start talking about some of these teams. And it's fun. You kind of mentioned it earlier, Ceruti, like the Eastern Conference, there's very clearly 8 teams. There's a few teams that are just really, really boring standard play-in teams that no one wants to talk about. And then there's like,
are you including Miami in the 8? Just really quickly,
I'm including Miami in the 8, but they're like definitively the 8th team in my opinion. out of those 8.
I'm interested to see what happens with Miami this year. I don't really have much on. I just want to point that out. I don't think they're that good.
I don't know what to do with them. Like they're going to be not bad, but I also I think their time of being the Celtics boogeyman and being the team in the East that everyone's got to be worried about. I feel like that's also kind of over. So I don't know. You're right. I think they're kind of a question mark for every tier below the top 4.
Too dependent on Tyler Hero
where they fit. Yeah,
that's never
and
yeah,
I don't know what that's gonna look like, but with the Western Conference, to your point, I think there's kind of about 4 or 5 teams that you feel, all right, these teams are at least definitely making the playoffs, and then there's 7 teams that could be anywhere from their ceiling is finishing 4th to they could be 12th. So the West is just a completely different beast, and that doesn't even fully really include Wemby and the Spurs, and they could be a team that's right in that, not necessarily all the way to 4th being their ceiling, but if Wemby just becomes an MVP candidate already, maybe they could be the 7th seed or the 6th seed, and they're somewhere in that mix as well. But let's start at the top of the conference, and you've mentioned the Nuggets a couple times already as a team that you have some thoughts on. So let's talk about the Nuggets from the top as one of those teams that I think they're going to be right there. Once again, even though KCP goes to your Magic, this is the 2nd straight year they've lost a key contributor. Jamal Murray, we talked about the melodrama from the Team USA with the Celtics. Team Canada, Jamal Murray, not a good experience this past
looking
summer.
a little doughy.
Yeah, didn't look great. So where are you at with the Nuggets? Feels like you think people are sleeping on them a little bit as well.
I just think Jokic is still the best player. I mean, we talked about this with Giannis before, but I do genuinely think Jokic is still the best player in the world. I think most people probably agree with that. The Murray thing is a little bit scary. I'm not as concerned with the KCP thing, even though obviously he's good, but I don't know, they got some good young wings, especially defensively. Can those guys knock down big shots? We'll find out. But I think I'd rather take, if I'm hey, I'm going to take a pick and say, hey, this is the team that's going to beat OKC because they're what everyone seems to be the clear favorite in the West. I think it's Denver over Minnesota for me, just because I don't like the Minnesota trade, and I think what made Minnesota really hard to play against Denver was that they had the 2 bigs. They had Cat, and to Cat's, we've kind of trashed on Cat a little bit, but he played really good defensively in that series against Jokic, and that wasn't as much Gobert, and now they don't have that, and Randall's certainly not doing that. So I just wonder if we're again kind of digging their grave a little bit too soon. Are they done? I like OKC. OKC figured out all of their things in the offseason. Hartenstein's a great, he solves literally the rebounding problems. They probably would have been in the conference finals if they had him last year. I think the Jalen Williams thing, he'll probably take another step. I really love his game. I think everybody really likes his game, and Shea might win the MVP again this year. So I get why people are picking them, but I think that number 2 spot, if you're talking Minnesota, you're talking Denver, you're talking Dallas, I'm not as high on Dallas. I think that was I don't want to say it was fluky because that's disrespectful, but it kind of was a little bit fluky.
I'm in the same boat. You're echoing my sentiments about Dallas entirely right now.
And I don't know, Minnesota, there's something about what that team was and what they are this year that's very different to me. So before I am hey, they're going to take another step. Who knows? Maybe Ant wins MVP this year and he has this massive breakout year and proves everybody wrong. But I'm still kind of keeping the door open for Denver to be interesting because it doesn't feel like a lot of people are talking about them.
Yeah, checking them out in Abu Dhabi. Well, I wasn't in Abu Dhabi, but watching them play against the Celtics in Abu Dhabi. Strawther was really interesting. He had a little bit more size than I realized. He's 6'6", 6'7", blocked Derek White's floater at one point, which doesn't happen. Played pretty good defense. He was feisty, kind of all over the court. Decent shot from the outside. So I think he could fit in there. I was a big fan of Peyton Watson last year. He's hurt right now, but I really like what he can bring on the defensive side of the ball.
Russell Westbrook. Can I
maybe
find some Russell Westbrook stock? I actually don't think it's, I'm not the biggest. I used to love Westbrook, have jumped off that bandwagon, but I actually think this is kind of a good spot for him.
I was a big Russ
it depends what they ask him. What they ask him to do.
I was all in on voting for Russ MVP season.
Yeah, I think it just depends what they ask or what they need him to do, right? Because the Nuggets kind of need more spacing and shooting, and that's the last thing you want Russell Westbrook to be doing. So I think there's a world in which it works, and I think he's fine. I think his time with the Clippers he finally got to like that 6-man mindset where he can end his career. I think I think Carmelo finally got there when he was with the Blazers. I actually really liked Melo's final stint with the Blazers when he just committed to being like a top reserve and still impacting the game. I thought he was really solid in that role for like 2-3 years at the end of his career. And I think Westbrook can do a similar thing, but I think it just depends, because I feel like Westbrook, getting back to like Marcus Smart, Jalen Suggs, those are guys where mentally they're going to be like, all right, shooting's not going well, I can do it. Like they're going to insert themselves into certain problems to try to fix them because they always feel like they can fix it. So I think if Westbrook stays within himself and they don't ask him and they can find the right situation, it could work. But I don't know. I'm a little skeptical.
He could do the Bruce Brown thing. Bruce Brown was great for them. So
right.
I
That's
think
kind of the
Westbrook
right place
could fit in there. The guy that is more interesting to me is Saric. I think Saric solves a lot of their issues with backup five. So, they had DeAndre Jordan as their backup five for a couple of years, right? So now they have a guy that is Jokic light in Saric. He can do a lot of the same stuff Jokic can do, just nowhere near the same efficiency at all. But I think the fact that they can play a very similar style for 48 minutes, just with a lesser version of Jokic out there, I think that's a sneaky good pickup for them, and they didn't pay him a lot of money. I think the team that's more interesting to me, though, is a lot of people have been talking about it. I know Simmons has talked about it a lot, but the Grizzlies, I think with Ja's return, they're going to be really interesting with Edie at the 5, Desmond Bane, great, coming off of screens and everything. I'm a little concerned about their size. I know Edie's 7'3" and he's huge, and Jackson's 7 feet, but then they have Ja, who's under 6'2". He's like 6'1.5", something like that. Marcus Smart 6'3", and Desmond Bane 6'3" with T-Rex arms. So, I mean, I don't know what they can do there on the wing.
I have no idea what to make of Memphis. Like, they'll probably be motivated. They're going to care about the regular season, so that I guess maybe that bodes well for them getting a higher seed, but it's the Edie thing. He could actually be dominant in the NBA. I mean, the guy he kind of moves better than people think. He's a decent shooter. I think he'll have some fun with Ja. It sounded like they really wanted Klingon. Speaking of my fellow Connecticutite, but they ended up just kind of getting Edie. But I think Edie does fit them like relatively well. I just don't know. Like, I don't know what to make of them. Like, they could either be, a play-in team, or they could be the 2 seed. And I don't know that I'd be terribly surprised. And I'm really not confident to be like, hey, I'm going to put my foot down. I think this team is going to be good or bad. Like, they could be either. But what is kind of weird is, like, in the West, you've got like we all think the Clippers are probably going to take a step back. I don't know that any of us really believe in the Suns. The Mavs, again, I don't know that I'm like super confident in them. Who knows about the regular season? Could like the Pelicans make a leap? Could the Kings kind of make a leap? I mean, Golden State is still kind of hanging out there. Yeah, like, so maybe that bodes well for your Grizzlies thing of like them jumping up the standings a little bit. But I think that like there's a lot of questions marks in like the middle of the West of teams that I don't know are going to be good, and then some teams that are like kind of younger and on the cusp of maybe like making a jump, but like, are they quite ready yet? So the middle of the West to me is fascinating.
Yeah, and I think all the reasons you're laying out right now is the reason that everyone's just going to pick the Thunder to come out of the West, because they're the one team other than them, I think, being other than them being young and relatively inexperienced. I made it to game 6 of the conference semifinals last year. Other than that, they have top to bottom depth. They have a lot of two-way guys. They got an MVP candidate. They've got two young guys that you've already mentioned, Chet and Jalen Williams, that are probably going to be, if not all-stars, they're, burgeoning all-stars. They're going to be right on that cusp and in that conversation. They make the 2 most perfect acquisitions that they could have in the offseason with Caruso and Hartenstein. And so, like, it's really hard to talk yourself. Like, as you were talking, Ceruti, I've been trying to commit to the Nuggets winning the West just because I believe in Jokic, and I think that's like the next level. Like, if the Celtics are going to get back to the finals, like, I can't, like, after everyone being like, well, it's a a bullshit run because everybody was hurt, and then everybody picked the Mavs, but yet apparently that doesn't count as beating somebody on the way to the finals for the Celtics, despite all media members picking the Mavericks. And so I kind of want the Celtics to, if they find their way through the East, to match up with the Nuggets and play that boogeyman in Nikola Jokic. But I would only pick the Nuggets over the Thunder just with some blind faith in Jokic. Otherwise, every other rational argument I try to make to myself about any team in the West just comes back to the Thunder should be the team that come out of the West.
Yeah, they're experience is like their only, and I even think the experience thing is kind of overblown, as you mentioned, because they made a good, not a deep run for a 1 seed, but they made a run. I think they realized what their deficiencies were and they fixed them. So yeah, like it's hard. Like, the easy finals pick is just say, hey, yeah, Boston and OKC. I don't know. Like, sure, like, obviously, like, there's a good chance that does happen, but I think it seems way more likely that a weird West team like to me, the thing with the Mavs last year happening, unless like OKC just turns into some like dynasty and they just go there, because they're built for it. If they are at that level, like, they could make like 3 finals in a row and win a couple, and who knows, it could be awesome. But it does kind of feel like the West in some ways like is ripe for like a team like the Mavs and maybe a team like the T-Wolves or maybe the Nuggets again, like breaking through every couple of years because of just depending on like health and matchups and like what teams' salary cap situations like look like that year that year more than it does in the East, because I don't know that like how much better can the Knicks get? Like, they kind of are who they are. And are they good enough to beat the Celtics? I don't think so. Whereas it feels like there's some untapped potential teams in the West, or at least there's more like variability in the West. And who knows? Like, maybe this is this like the last good year too to get OKC before things really like get out of hand and they have this insane roster. So I don't know. Like, maybe could you argue that this is actually Jokic's like last best chance to win a title? Maybe before OKC really gets rolling. I don't know.
Kevin Durant's last great year.
I don't even know. I wouldn't be surprised if there were trade requests midseason from that team. Who knows? Like, can KD ask for another trade?
Do you think all 3 of their star players request a trade? Has that ever happened? I mean, all 3 players want to get out of there.
Loosely, Bradley Beal calling him a star player. I don't know if I'd go that far. He could score on a bad team. I don't know what Booker would do. I mean, Booker's certainly like the prized possession, but like, what if I know who could make it like an offer to, but if things get really bad and they're like, they get off to a bad start and the vibes are terrible and everybody wants out, I am putting zero investment. I'm going to be watching very closely, but I'm putting zero investment into Phoenix this season, because who freaking knows, man.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And then obviously, Wemby being in the West is just going to be fun.
I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet I don't even know that. I mean, they might push for a plan. I think that team is still.
I was going to say, what's the ceiling for Wemby and byproduct the Spurs?
And Chris Paul, come on.
And Chris Paul.
If Chris Paul
will be there after the trade deadline, so he's going to get moved by the trade deadline.
I don't know. So. I mean, maybe. I mean, I wish Wemby got the Chris Paul that like OKC got, that SGA got. Who still had some gas left in the tank. Maybe. I think he's gonna. He'll probably teach these guys a bunch, and he's gonna be the quote unquote coach on the court. For them, I don't think that team is very good. I guess we'll have to see what the UConn kid does, and I like him. I think he could be good, but it seems like it's going to take some time to develop. But can Wemby I know we think he's that good.
Adult in the room as well that they added, so I like that pickup for them. Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, it's not terrible. Like he's a competent.
It's not changing your world, starter. But I mean they were incompetent in many places last
year.
Totally,
they were terrible.
Having him just
here's the thing with Chris Paul now on the team, Harrison Barnes on the team, Vassell is year 4 with Devin Vassell?
I think it's 4, and then his contract kicks in next year, I believe, or maybe this is the first.
Keldon Johnson coming off the bench. They're not going to have Sohan running the point. Like, maybe Pop is actually going to try and win games instead of just doing what he did last year, experimenting and tanking. That's what they were pretty much doing. So I think this year, if Pop sets out with the idea that he wants to win games, although there still is capture the flag happening around the NBA, I think there's a chance they could work their way into the playing conversation. I don't expect them to be there either. It's just like Wemby's going to be fun to watch. We're in Austin, Texas, so it'll be pretty easy for us to drive, catch a couple Wemby games. They come to Austin twice. I'm sure we'll be at those games. So he'll just be a fun talking point. Right now, he's favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year, -190. Like everyone's expecting a big year out of him.
Yeah, Russillo voted for him last year as a rookie, which is obviously says a lot. The thing with the West, though, you look at it, I mean, other than like Portland, who's definitely going to be bad?
Yeah, it's the West is insane. Like we said, we don't expect the Spurs could be a play-in team. I guess the Jazz would be the other candidate for that. Even that they have players, right?
They have a really good player and a good coach. Yeah,
what was that? A month worth of content for Simmons and Russillo about who's going to trade for Lauri Markkanen until he signed that extension. Yep. You know what I mean? Everybody would, so they got a couple of guys, so they're not terrible, but I guess them and the Blazers would be at the bottom, and then the Spurs, like we said, they're just Wemby dependent on whatever they're going to be. But other than that, then all of a sudden you're looking at every team from 12 to 5 could kind of end up anywhere, and good luck trying to predict what that looks like.
I have a feeling the Clippers are. I mean, this isn't like a unique take, but I think they're going to be bad. So
I mean, is Kawhi even going to be ready for opening night? Like he's already questionable for opening night to start the season. So
the way James Harden's
it's
already talking, I'm like, how could I wish I could short stock in like you can in real life. Although I guess you could theoretically do it in the gambling spaces, but I think I don't think there's a chance that they're going to be good.
Yeah, well, I got another question here for you, Ceruti. Greg mentioned we live down here in Austin, Texas. We've been talking about Wemby. You guys with the Russillo podcast, you guys are hitting up all these different locations for live shows. Austin, Texas. We got the #1 college football team. We've got Wemby just down the road. Greg mentions he comes up. The Spurs have 2 different games in Austin this season. I can't remember which game's top of my head right now. Are we any chance we're gonna have a Russillo stop by here, the ATX at some point for a live show?
It's not. I've never been to Austin, and I know everybody loves it. Although Ryen did recently on a pod, I think he said he was talking about like the Texas campus, Austin, how it was like a little underwhelming for him. Like I don't know if he expected more or whatever, but everyone does talk about how great Austin is. The thing that who should be our guest, because we want the easiest thing for us is, and the reason we did Philly is because Chris Long, former Eagle, loves the city, natural sort of thing there. We kind of want to do more of that. So like, who's our Austin guest? I guess is it Sark?
Well,
Can we get Sark?
You might be able to get Sark. This year, are the Suns coming to Austin? Is KD returning?
I think it might be the Suns. So Kevin Durant in Austin. That's a get right there. I mean, even Wemby while you're in Austin here, McConaughey, of course, is always
that's a good call.
Be an
McConaughey,
answer,
yeah, we haven't had McConaughey in a couple of years. That would actually be interesting.
I feel like I don't know this. Are you guys big Glenn Powell guys?
So you know what's funny? I've never met him, don't know him, but when Kevin Clark left The Ringer to do his ESPN thing, I don't know if you guys have seen like what the artwork for his show at Omaha is, but it basically looks like a cartoon it's a cartoon version of him, but it looks like Glenn Powell. So I shot out a tweet and I didn't even tag him. I said like, wow, like awesome that Glenn Powell, is getting a new football podcast at ESPN, and Glenn Powell liked it on Twitter out of nowhere. Didn't tag him, didn't anything. So I don't know if he searches his mentions or somebody. So I just because of that, I'm a Glenn Powell fan. So Glenn Powell is welcome on the pod anytime. On top
he's
of that,
on the rise.
I do like his movies.
He's basically I think he's kind of setting himself up to be McConaughey Jr. He's also an Austin guy here. You now see him on the sidelines for a lot of Texas games, and I think maybe even some Austin FC games, which McConaughey is very involved in. So he's really setting. He's laying the seeds here. So we've got a couple different options.
You guys might be honest. That's a good call because we do have to kick around like different. And we've been to Denver. We've done obviously Philly. Where else have we been? We've done Vegas. That was a little bit different. We've done LA. And we haven't really gone. We actually did Ole Miss. We went to Oxford for an LSU Ole Miss game, but that was like a totally different vibe. Austin would be a decent spot. This is a good call, guys.
Hey,
all right, I like
those backstage passes, man. Come on.
Yeah, listen, you guys will get hooked up. Don't worry about it. I know.
So before we get out of here, man.
By the way, real quick, Will. Sorry for interrupting your transition. Glenn Powell, have you seen Hitman with Adria Arjona?
Yeah, loved it. That was great.
Unbelievable movie. I've watched it like 3 times.
He's an effortless movie star. I saw the movie with Sydney Sweeney that the title is escaping my mind. It wasn't. He carried that movie. I mean, obviously she looks great, but
that's about all you can say. That's about all you can say about her performance. Now that she looks great.
Yeah, it was. Bill has this like theory that, and I don't know if it's Bill or I forget who said this, somebody, but like that she actually like can't really speak that well. For an actress, that's like kind of a tough thing. Like it's hard. Like she doesn't like enunciate everything. But he definitely carried that movie. I haven't seen Twisters yet. I'd like to see it once it comes out on some free streaming service. I'll see it. But I like the original one. He is just like an effortless movie star. And Pitt-esque. Yeah. Yep. I would agree. But you mentioned too, like he's kind of there's a McConaughey element to him, although he's like a little less. I don't know. It feels like less of a character. It's more like he's more genuine. Even not that McConaughey's not genuine, but McConaughey he plays up the voice. It feels like a character.
It is genuine. It's your friend that you don't really, or someone like on the fringe of your friend group that you don't really like because you think they're putting on a performance or an act. But then as you get to know them, it's like, okay, this is like 3 years in, you kind of just accept them for who they are. And you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. But you got to get past that barrier of like, okay, they're not just a character. That's weirdly, I guess, authentically who they are.
Glenn's just like one of your buddies who is just like pumped that gets to do what he does every day, which seems very endearing. So Yeah, so
Awesome, man.
we'll put in the word. That'll be we'll have to put in the word and see if you would be
Let's
interested
go.
in
Come
hopping
on down to Austin, Texas. We'll hang out with you guys. We'll try to show you a good time. I mean, I'm sure Russillo has plenty of contacts down here as well, but we'll take you and nephew Kyle out for a little bit.
Thank you.
If you guys need some guides around town, we'll make sure that we can do that. But for that to happen, obviously on the show, we know Greg has a newborn right now, 3-month-old.
Nice.
I know that you've been very open about your kind of parenting journey during life advice. So I wanted to ask you, and maybe this will help us because right now, this is Greg and I's first season with a kid as part of the Green with Envy ecosystem here. So we've been letting our fans know, be patient with us. We're still trying to figure out what our balance is of coverage. Like, we're not going to be doing, it's just not going to be realistic for us to go live after every single game and do a post-game pod like we tried to do as consistent as we could last year. So we're going to have to get a little bit more structured. So give us a little bit of advice of like, and this is more specific to Greg, at least for now, as to what it is to have that work-life dad balance and how that all works into the podcast game.
I mean, first off, congratulations. It's the best.
Thank you.
I like the older that my daughter gets, the better and more fun it is. And I think that's like really cool. Like, all the older parents will tell you all the things that it's like, all right, this is cliche. Like, oh, shit's so fun. Cherish it. It doesn't last long. Everything goes by so fast. And it's all true. But you kind of don't really understand that until you experience it in real life. And I would say it was easier though. And again, we are not the mothers, so it's different for the dad when we're just kind of like, playing like, you're basically like Robin to her Batman at times. But it's harder now. And my daughter's almost 2 because she just, you need to do more stuff. Or like when they're kids, you can kind of just like plop them down, like give them some toys. They take a lot more naps. They're obviously less mobile. Now, when they get close to 2, they're picky eaters. They like have a lot of opinions. They're moving around everywhere. Bedtime's a little bit more challenging, at least for us, although she's mostly a good sleeper. So I have, the good thing, I think, when you're in the role or in the time frame you are, like, if you're up at random hours of the night, that's probably when I watched a lot of basketball because like you're just sitting there, like you're trying to get her to go to sleep and she just wants to land you. And I got on my phone, I got League Pass on my phone, and you're just like, all right, I'll just watch some games. That kind of makes it easy. It's when they get a little bit older, when they start becoming like kind of toddlers, that you really have to, because I'm not a planner. Like I try to just go as it is in life, which is like that I produce things because like there's a lot of planning that goes into it. But in my own life, I kind of just like to go with the flow. And I've learned that is not how you can do it with a kid. So yeah, I think you got to kind of pick and choose your spots, but know that like it's all fun and it like continues to get better. But you're kind of in a sweet spot now where you probably are going to have less and less time the older the kid gets.
Yeah, no, I mean, right now he's 3 months and like 2 weeks. He was born on July 4th, actually. So
it's a
really cool birthday. Yeah. But cool, I think with him, right now he's pretty chill. He sleeps pretty much through the night.
That's
the
huge.
thing
Yeah.
I'm most concerned about is like how much I refer to myself as Dada, and how much I might start doing that like in public and when I'm talking with people and on work calls and stuff like that. How did you give me like quick advice? What is one thing that you did, like kind of pull back the curtain for me as a dad that was just like super goofy that you wouldn't do in public that you have had a hard time getting rid of?
So we call her Cheese, which is not like and that's like my nickname for her. And we call her that because she's always had like this really cheesy, cute smile. And I started calling that like to her in public, and they started calling her that at daycare. And my wife was like, you can't say that name out of the house. Like that's now they're going to start calling her Cheese. And I'm like, so what? It's hilarious. She's Cheese.
That's a great name.
That's who she is. Yeah. Like, it's appropriate. She also loves to eat cheese. So again, there's a lot of things that connect into this. So, I'm kind of always good with like dumb nicknames for her that I probably should keep more close to the vest as like family things, but I just kind of let it fly. Like we call her Lady too. Like there's just like a lot of like random nicknames that we have that are kind of goofy for her that she does really like. And I'm trying to think like, just other like unique stuff. I don't know. Like I think we're a big Bluey household now. Oh, what's a funny thing too is my daughter's birthday is basically like right around Halloween. And we're having it's her second birthday party. So we're like, yeah, let's like have like a Halloween party with some kids and have people over. So we were trying to figure out what we're gonna be. And we kind of kicked around like, are we going to be Bluey? She could be Bluey. We could be the parents. You get the onesie thing. But we settled on she's gonna be. Have you guys seen Monsters Inc?
Yeah.
So she looks just like Boo, the kid from Monsters Inc.
Oh,
So she's gonna
love
be
this.
Boo, and we're gonna be Sully and Mike Wazowski. So we got like the full suit, like we're going all in. So people are gonna look at us and be like, "What the heck is wrong with these people?" They're like in full Monsters Inc. garb, but like that's just I don't know, man. Like she's gonna love it, and you gotta kind of be weird and goofy, I guess. And like as long as she's smiling about it, that's all the only thing that matters.
Yeah, that's what matters. Yeah, we nicknamed for our guys Bug because Danielle,
Good
my
nickname.
fiance, was calling him Love Bug for so long, like my little love bug, and then it just shortened to Bug and Buggy and Bugga. So we're like imagining him as a professional athlete in the future, and like being Bug Menakis, I think is actually a pretty cool name.
Ooh,
So
that's a pretty
That's
good
an
name.
athlete name.
I
That's
hadn't
an
even
athlete
thought
name.
about that. I could see Bug Menakis, ranked 17th on ESPN, top 1. I can see that name, and it's getting a little bit of love just for the name. I like.
Yeah,
that.
Bug Menakis is like SEC cornerback too. I could see like like that's and it's not quite a quarterback name, but it's like a defensive end like safety name. Bug. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Bug's a great one. And also, when you said that you call your daughter Cheese, immediately all I could think about was that old school scene. Cheese.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. Did we lock you in a dumpster one time? Yeah. Good to see you.
Yeah, I got out.
So-
I got out.
Yeah,
Good
I
for
got
you,
out.
man.
I got
Good for
out.
you.
Yeah, yeah. What are you doing now? I'm the dean. Yeah. So I was immediately thinking of that scene when you said that. But Ceruti, we're gonna let you get out of here. I know that you gotta run here, man. But aside from the impending live Ryen Russillo podcast coming up in Austin, Texas at a to be determined date, what else you guys got going on here just to make sure that our fans are locked into the Ringer, the Ryen Russillo podcast, and everything else going on?
Yeah, we got Bill and Ryan and House tomorrow. That's Tuesday, are taping like their big yearly NBA over-unders pod. So they go through every single team.
Love that one.
And I think it's like 3 parts. And it's like literally one of the best pods they do every single year, which is a lot of fun. So they're taping that tomorrow. So that'll probably be out in a bunch of parts and on YouTube. And then as we're taping this, I got like a million scarves behind me. I host a soccer pod for the Ringer as well, called the Ringer Soccer Show. We got a big U.S.
It's a
match
busy
against
time of year for
Mexico.
you, man. Jesus.
A lot of stuff going on. I know the soccer stuff, although we just had an international break, so it was a little bit light at least. But we got USA Mexico tomorrow night. We're going to be doing a pod after that. Plus, we'll have some Premier League bets and stuff to talk about over the weekend. So, Ringer Soccer Show if you're a big soccer fan.
Love it. And if you're listening to this on the audio version, likely that's already up on Spotify because this will release probably Thursday as far as the audio stream. So go ahead and check that out. That will actually likely already be live.
Out.
Get your recap of USA Mexico on. Greg, any final thoughts here before we send this out and get Ceruti out of here?
Looking forward to the Luke Cornett section on the Russillo pod. And yeah, thanks again for coming on, man.
Yeah, we had this segment
Ceruti.
that was real quick. We had this segment that we wanted to do called like hard sevens, where it was just like guys that you like that aren't great, but they're just like a 7, like a 7 out of 10 and whatever.
I like
Cornett
that.
He might make that list. That might be not a bad one for him.
From a basketball perspective, and I'm hoping that the Ringer's working on bringing on Zach Lowe somehow to the roster because I can't imagine basketball coverage without Zach Lowe.
Quiet. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm hoping that's happening. But the Luke Walton All-Stars, that kind of feels like in that same vein from the basketball perspective. These guys are just solid. I like these guys. That's Santi Aldama for me. We all have a guy that we feel that way about. So
Norman Powell is one of my guys. So yeah, that was exactly.
Love it, man. Well, I'll tell you what. Maybe if you guys don't get that going on the Russillo show, come back on here. We'll start that up on here. We'll do that segment with you. No problem. Appreciate you joining us as always. Always enjoy having you on. That'll do it for this episode of Green with Envy. We'll be back with some more content. We're right up against tip-off here for the NBA season, so we'll have some Knicks Celtics content coming for you guys here in the coming days. But we'll catch you guys on the other side. Appreciate everybody for joining us in on the live stream here on YouTube, and we will catch you guys later. Peace.
Missed free throw, 4 for the rebound. Here's Pritchard. He loves these. Puts it up half court to the buzzer.
Every time I get this high, I lose my mind. It don't take much no more until I hit the floor. Every time I get this high, it's you I find. It don't take much no more until I'm at your door. I'm coming to my core, baby. What can I say? You got me on the floor, you know I came to play. I know I shouldn't, but you seem to take my pain away. And every time I score, Jason Tatum fade away. I close my eyes and I'm floating your river. I call to see if you open, you know I hope you deliver. Every time you're getting close, I still be sick with the shivers. But there's nothing like that first time. I still remember remember the first time I saw you. You were looking so fine, chill like lo-fi, watch you go by. It was all I could do to say hi. I still remember the first time I saw you.